Greetings, John here with another look at Hitman. This time, we have the Xbox One version in-house and ready for comparison. So let's get to it, shall we? As the only version of the game not made available in beta form, we were eager to see how the Xbox One version stacks up. To start with, just as we saw on PS4, the Xbox version defaults to an unlocked frame rate with the option to cap it at 30 FPS if you choose. Considering how variable the frame rate can be, however, this is a very welcome option and one we definitely prefer, though of course, the option to change this is always nice. For this video, we decided to start by testing the game with the frame rate unlocked to get a better idea of how it stacks up against the PS4 version. With the cap removed, it gives us a better idea of how each console handles the game when running flat out. The results are, well, interesting, and as you'll soon see, sometimes unexpected. But the surprise doesn't reveal itself right away. We started off in the initial training area and found that PS4 holds a pretty significant advantage over the Xbox One here. The version on Microsoft's box generally runs 5 to 10 frames per second slower on average than the final game on PlayStation 4. Unfortunately, this can sometimes mean performance in line with the beta version. In this particular section, it's possible to drop the frame rate to the low 20s, which does not occur on PlayStation 4. Still, aside from this one section, both versions do a good job of maintaining performance above 30 FPS. It's just that PlayStation 4 has the advantage here. This is also why we find the frame rate cap so important. When engaged, players are treated to a predominantly steady presentation on both consoles, aside from the aforementioned area on the ship deck. We see this trend continue in the second training area as well. PS4 comes close to delivering a steady 60 frames per second here, but the Xbox One spends most of its time in the 50s instead. Considering the difference in hardware and the fact that the visuals are otherwise identical, this seems par for the course. Then it's off to Paris, and things start as expected. The gap is nearly closed here, but PS4 continues to hold a slight advantage over Xbox One. This particular sequence seems to run slower than any other section we encountered, by the way, but thankfully it's non-interactive. Once we're handed control, things do start to perk up. But that's not the end of this story. We mentioned the surprise earlier, and that's what we see here. As we continued our way through the map and made our way into the building, well, something changed. Xbox One took the lead. Now, as we explore this crowded room, the Xbox One commands a 2 to 3 frames per second lead. Sure, it's nowhere near as pronounced as what we saw earlier, but it certainly is fascinating. There's clearly something about these areas that is bottlenecking the PS4. Thankfully, both versions still manage to stay above 30 FPS here, leading to a stable level of performance once the frame rate cap is engaged. Here in Paris, we have to greatly encourage this as well, since the unlocked frame rate just isn't high enough to prove beneficial. Oh, and just as we saw on PS4, the loading times for the Paris map are incredibly long. Both versions clock in at more than 90 seconds, which really isn't acceptable. There are actually a lot of loading-related pauses and skips throughout the experience as well. Bringing up the menu when prompted, for instance, isn't as smooth or quick as it needs to be. It really feels as if the engine is struggling to load things in and out of memory. So that about wraps things up here. As you can see, both versions of the game have the potential to offer a mostly locked 30 FPS experience. When removing the cap, however, we're given an interesting look at the variation in performance when other settings, such as resolution, remain equal. Both versions run at 1080p, and based on our initial impressions, detail levels appear to be identical, making this a rather interesting test. Anyways, that's it for now. As always, thanks for watching, and be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. And until next time, this is John, signing off.